It's been written that we were botanists, that we knew the plants, that we knew how to use them. This is our land. This is where we came from. This is who we are.
For 1,000 years, the Paiutes were one of the largest Indian kindred group, whose ties created a social network that spread throughout the western Rocky Mountains, the Colorado Plateau, and the Great Basin. In the early years, the Southern Paiutes lived as far south as what is now Southern California, migrating north to occupy southern Nevada, southern Utah, and northern Arizona. Up until the 1600s, the Paiutes and Utes shared a similar lifestyle. Southern Paiutes today include the Pavant, Ute Paiute, and several small related groups of Paiutes. Present-day Paiute bands in Utah include the Casharam, Kanash, Indian Peaks, Shivwits, and Cedar bands, with ancestral bands living in Arizona and Nevada.
The Paiute people were very peaceful, also very timid and foragers and horticulturists, humble beginnings.
Moving seasonally in small groups and families, the Paiutes gathered roots, berries, and pine nuts, wandering in areas that include present-day Zion, Bryce, and Grand Canyon National Parks. They fished and hunted deer, antelope, mountain sheep, and rabbits. In the green valleys of the desert basin, Paiutes developed sophisticated farms and gardens, growing corn, squash, beans, and melons along the tributaries of the Virgin River.
And they also dug irrigation ditches to where they diverted the water into that area. And the plants on the water that they lived on, are just like here you see with a willow plant, for instance, it's right next to the water, and it helped them making their baskets, their cradles, and all these things of carrying water, their bowls.
They had to carry water from a long ways, when they were out in the, down in a flat area during the winter. And so they had to rely on these little wickiups. They had to build it so that it would keep them warm inside. And the rabbit fur were their blankets, so they had to, kill a lot of rabbits.
When the Europeans arrived in 1776, horses enabled the Utes and Spanish trading parties to raid, capture, and sell Paiute slaves, mainly women and children. Conflict continued with the arrival of Mormon pioneering settlements in the 1850s. Never considered something that could be owned, the Paiutes' favored lands were occupied throughout southern Utah. Epidemics of disease soon swept the Paiutes, killing more than 90% of some groups. For years to come, this quiet, independent people of the Great Basin found their lives challenged in unfulfilled promises, poverty, and dependence. As a vulnerable and desperate people, the Paiutes were forced into roles of servitude and labor for the Mormons, who, upon settlement, swiftly began a religious campaign to, quote, civilize, thus save the Indian.
I don't think they really knew what they were doing, and they just did what the missionaries were telling them to do.
In celebration of their restored status, the Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah joined together with intertribal members and the community in an annual powwow gathering.
You go around the dance arena and you grow and you learn in that dance arena, and then you come full circle. And then when you go out after the powwow is over, you go out of that arena and it's over. The same way as life. You come in, you go around this circle and learn about life. You grow in this life, and then one day you have to leave and you go out. The same way, circle of life, that's what they call it.
As a dancer, musician, and educator, Shannon Martineau believes in a sacred meaning of the circle of life. She is concerned for Paiute youth, their cultural apathy and indifference. Shannon believes the future of the Paiutes will turn on the cultural knowledge and opportunities provided to the young.
Me being out there with kids seeing me and coming up to me, asking me, did you make your outfit, or how did you do that? And so I'm there to tell them. Maybe it'll inspire them to do the same. Like my kids, they enjoy going to powwows now, and they want to learn. I'm proud to be a Paiute in the Shivwits band, and so anything I can teach anybody, I'm just willing to to be there to help them out.
A veteran of the Vietnam War, Clarence is considered a cultural hero in his own community, teaching Paiute children the traditional ways of their ancestors. Clarence is also concerned about the future of the youth as he observes the tribe's withering cultural identity.
It's dwindling away. That's why it's important for us seniors to teach the grandkids and the rest of the children why they're performing and what the sacred ceremonies they have down there. Just like our language is dwindling away because there's nobody, the seniors are all gone and they just haven't had the chance to talk Paiute.
Eleanor Tom is one of a handful of Utah's Southern Paiute elders who speaks the Paiute language. She is a keeper of the flame, carrying forward the traditional skills and stories passed on from her grandmothers.
I listened to my grandmothers when they told me all these stories, and you had to stay awake. Sometimes stories would last for 2 days. The creator to us is the Sunawa, and Dubat was his brother. That's the wolf. This is a story that they tell about these two, what they did, and why we do the things that they did. They're the ones that did a lot of the things that's happening in this world today. We have come a long ways, the Paiute people.
Laura, what does "we shall remain" mean to you?
We shall remain, and we always will, and we always have. And it's from what I see from the support from what we have in our tribe, as well as the tribes in the state of Utah.
When you have a tribe in your own backyard and you don't recognize them and acknowledge that they're here and that they benefit the community, I think Congress and others want to either assimilate them or block them out. It hasn't happened in past history. It never has. As they've tried to exterminate a lot of the tribes, we're still here. We'll always be here.
It's heavy. Do you know what this is, baby? Look, when you were little, I used to carry you here, and I don't know what our future holds for us, just like the rest of America. I want to say, yeah, we'll be here forever, and you're not going to take our traditions away, but you got to be realistic about that. Our generation needs to instill in their kids that who Paiute is and to make them proud of it. I think they're just not proud of it when they hear it, Paiute. We've been through slavery and the Mormons accusing us of a lot of stuff, and a lot of our ancestors have died and our lands were taken away from us, but we're survivors, and I think that we'll be here a long time.
Wisembo aroke nanzeyo, Wisembo aroke nanzeyo, ayo ain't never, ayo ain't round down song.
You'd be surprised how many people call our office and want to see some of our folks dress up in our regalia. They believe that we do that every day, but I come to work in clothes that I wear today.
A lot of them think that we're nothing but drunks and that we're probably just not even going to graduate and just be drunks and do nothing with our lives. But being here, we've learned a lot. Like, I may not live on the res, but I know that we're all the same, that we have moms and dads. We don't have a lot of people, like, we do not live in teepees. We live in houses. We have running water, and it's like we're the same like everybody else. We're just from different cultures, and I am proud of who I am. And I'm proud to be Paiute.
The bear's the one that gave the Utes the dance itself. It's part of the way they're waking up the spring, the way the bears hibernate. He's the one that sleeps through winter, and when the first thunder comes, like that sound, that's the thunder. It represents waking up the bear and the coming of better times. But the true simplicity and joy of what I understand from my belief is what brings all of the rules and the formulas for our way of life are for the people. That it's a matter of healing, of being together, and that in fact the most important thing about all of those things we do is for each other.
The Utes have celebrated the bear dance for hundreds of years. It's a tradition that predates Mormon pioneers and Spanish conquistadors who called us Yutas or Ute. It goes back to a time when we called ourselves Nooch, the people. A time when we lived in small family groups, traveling on foot, when men hunted and fished while women gathered roots, berries, and seeds. They mended clothing and shelters and cared for the children. Then, in the 1600s, the Nooch encountered the Spanish. They introduced us to the horse and a new concept, slavery. Soon, our lifeways changed.
Before the Spaniards brought the horse, we call it guva. Before the horse, we were on foot, and we could only go so far as our feet would carry us. What we learned from the Spaniards were how to use that horse to conquer other people. So it made our people very powerful. We were a feared people, nation.
They pushed the other tribes out. The strongest held their place. That's why Utes were never removed from the mountains, because it was solid. That's why we're still mountain people. I think the Utes as a whole were really a strong tribe. So they didn't remove us. We're still here.
We are still here. Today, over 6,000 Ute live in the mountains, deserts, and cities throughout the West. We have 3 tribal reservations: the Northern Ute headquartered in Fort Duchesne, Utah, the Southern Ute in Ignacio, Colorado, and the Ute Mountain Ute in the Four Corners region, including the White Mesa community in Utah. But there was a time when much of the basin and plains, the lands that would become Utah and Colorado, were our home. Before settlers entered our homeland, there were bands of Ute ranging across most of Colorado and Utah and parts of Wyoming and New Mexico. For hundreds of years, the Ute negotiated or bartered with European outsiders in our territory. But in 1847, everything changed when religious leader Brigham Young led a group of Mormon settlers into the Salt Lake Valley.
He said, this is a place. But the question that always is there from the Indian point of view is, where was the Indian that was supposed to be standing there and says, this is yours? It's gone. The man just went there and said, this is a place, without inquiring about who lives there.
Well, when the settlers came, they were different than the other people that came through Ute country. They stayed. They took the best hunting lands. They killed all the game to feed them. And everything that we praised held worth anything, they ate it up. And our people kept getting pushed and pushed till we were just in the way. So they killed all the game that we used to get there. And our people said, well, you kill ours, we're going to kill your cows. And that's what they started to do. But the way that the settlers felt was that everything was here for them. And it's completely different as thinking as far as native people.
Remember that we're not speaking the same language, Ute and English. and they cannot communicate to each other and say, here's what I'm doing. So the difference is there. So one treated as a war, the other one treated as a trade. Nuuti maro mapugat tiawan punit katama tawachnia tamar mapugat. Puni was tamokat maro amar manaitit. The language that we speak today, we use that to communicate. But the other part to that, it contains words which has a spiritual connection to nature or the higher level of spirit. Words that we cannot put into like English. That's why it's important. The language itself at this point is deteriorating. With that, kind of gives you the feeling that we are losing our identity. Once a language is gone, there will be no more Ute tribe.
Everyone, Mike. Mike. This is how it looks. When I write it, that means hello. Everyone, Mike. 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 Mike.
Benita Tavapont teaches Ute traditions at Uinta River High School. She is battling cancer while fighting to keep Ute language and culture alive.
Mike. They need to learn how to be Ute. And I see too many of the students coming into this high school now that have little knowledge or no knowledge of being Ute. And what I mean by saying being Ute is being able to communicate, being able to have knowledge of Ute cultural practices. It's not just beads and feathers. It's how your family is, the values that your family has. And if you're not secure in your own identity and secure in knowing your language and your culture, that you are going to have a problem anywhere you go. That's going to be pretty.
Without a strong cultural identity, it can be difficult to achieve in school. In Utah, American Indian students are twice as likely to drop out compared to the state average.
One of the things that we need to realize that they're in competition with a non-Indian student in the local high school. To be competitive, it means you have to speak out. You have to be the first one to raise your hand. You have to be, quite vocal. We're not taught to be quite vocal. And so if you're competing and you're not from a culture that emphasizes competition, then you're not going to do as well. Okay, good, excellent. Some people say that they walk in two worlds, the non-Indian world and the Indian world. But one of the things that I found as an Indian person is that I think you have to be strong in your own language and your own culture, in your own identity, knowing where you come from and knowing where you're going, and to be able to do that. And I think the students today, or young people today, have a hard time because they don't have that knowledge or that being able to move easily between the two. And sometimes I see them hurting because of that. My grandfather had told me that you take the good from our culture and what we do, and you take the good from the non-Indian culture and you put it together and to be successful. And if I want them to have success, I want them to be strong in their own language, in their own culture, their own traditional practices. I want them to be strong in that. Hey, cool. You're good.
For hundreds of years, our people had been here. The remains of my people is here. So that's why we find it, it's always a good feeling to come back home to our homeland. So I want to say this to my ancestors. I did not forget you. We did not forget you. We returned. We're back here. Now we're here.
We're still here in spite of genocide, in spite of being chased off the land, in spite of being moved by gunpoint, and land being taken away, and the greater society not having any respect for our culture. We're still here.
We hold the blood of our families, and we are Ute. That's us. That's us that drives the truck down the road. That's us that farms in the field. That's us that's in college. And that's what I see as a Ute, is all of the variety of life that began from our ancestral lands, from our home, began from that time, spreading out to today. And we're so many things. We're everything.
And I think it encompasses a lot of things, and not just your own culture and your own traditions, but everything in this day and age is what being Nooch means to me. And hopefully that I have been walking in the path that my grandmothers have wanted me to do, and my grandfather and the people before them, what they wanted or their grandchildren to do. I hope I'm walking in that path.
This territory, what is now called northwestern Utah and northeastern Nevada, remains one of the most sparsely populated regions of the United States.
Jidemba Goshut Imba Soraim, where I'm a sopra, put them up.
The word Goshut does not exist in our language. Its origins and variations have many explanations.
There's different interpretations, and I don't know if we'll ever really find the true meaning of where the word came.
What binds us has a deeper meaning, the land from which we came.
Because it does have a meaning with my tribe. That means the ashes from a dried pool of water. Did we raise from the ashes? In that respect, I have a strong relationship to that word.
This land is our mother, Tamasogovia. Water is our grandmother, Tamangagu. Fire is our grandfather, Tamandogo. The sun, our father, Tamapa.
The Goshutes, they were desert people. They were very knowledgeable of what the land provided for them.
They're hunter-gatherers, but more gatherers than hunters. They gathered a lot of plant materials. Their medicinal uses for plant materials were just really astronomical.
Where the water is located, that's where the game come. Certain watering places throughout the desert were known by the early Goshutes, and they knew where to go.
And rabbit was a big staple. I mean, they made their clothes out of rabbit fur, they made bags out of rabbit. They'd dry the rabbit for the season. They'd have big hunts, even with other band member tribes. And they'd actually drive rabbits into kind of an apex with shrubs around them.
When you're out in the desert, the only thing that's available is a sagebrush. So they built shelter with the sagebrush and to protect them from the elements. And there were times when things were hard, and so when things were hard, what was made available to them was the insects. So they even had insects drives.
And they'd actually roast them on hot rocks. They'd heat the rocks up, put them in a pit, and put the crickets in there. And they said they taste like shrimp. I've never tried it, but I'd like to.
They were grateful and very thankful for what the Creator had offered them. I don't think they knew that they were, according to some of the people, they were destitute people because they didn't have, what the Europeans had as far as their living, but they adapted to their surroundings. And so the land itself is very significant to them. And so they still hold on to the land, and it makes the people who they are.
Women wove many types of baskets from willows. Perhaps most symbolic of the Great Basin way of life is the water jug.
This water jug is old. So this is my treasure. And this is made out of willows. It's all willows. And the handle is made out of cedar bark. You get pitch from the pine trees and you boil it. It's like making candy. You have to keep testing it. And when it gets to a certain texture, you pour it in here with rocks, and then you coat the inside, pushes them through the holes and seals the holes. It's a good water jug.
We traveled in small family groups to far expanses in order to hunt for large game and trade with other tribes. Stories of creation were told in the winter.
And a lot of times those stories were pretty scary, or they were pretty funny, or they were stories that told you about life.
Like cartoon characters, they dressed them up and they'd talk for them, they'd sing for them. The kids would sit and listen, make them pay attention. That was part of their learning. If someone would ask, so what happened, they'd tell the kids, the rat's tail is cut.
Yeah.
And that would end the story, and they wouldn't go on anymore, and everybody have to go to bed for interrupting, yes.
We would gather for spring and fall celebrations. We would sing and dance, play hand game. Damandoya bagi bagana havinore. Damandoya bagi bagana havinore. We would end the gatherings with the ceremonial dance, the Naraya. This dance was danced for the well-being of the people, for abundance of vegetation to feed the people and animals. Damandoya bagi bagana havinore. The expanse of the Great Basin gave us many gifts. Its isolation protected us. Our elders told us stories of the first European people they met.
Commodore lived to be a very old man. He remembered when the Spaniards roamed this area, the longhorn cattle, and he would say that when the wind would blow, the high green grass would just wave.
The Spaniards brought horses. Other tribes were able to use the horse as an advantage. The horse had no such benefit for us. Water was scarce. A grazing animal would quickly destroy the renewable seeds and plants essential to our way of life. Though we had use for the horse in certain areas, we remained traditional in our hunting and gathering ways. When slave traders began to prey on our people, we retreated deeper into our homelands for protection. Generations would pass before we saw new white faces in this land. European explorers began searching for routes across our treacherous desert. Those seeking passage to a new life, such as the immigrant Donner Party, struggled across the difficult terrain. The Mormon people established a city along the Rocky Mountains in 1847. They sent their pioneers west along the pools and mudflats of the Great Salt Lake, into the fertile valleys where we traditionally wintered. Civil war was brewing. Rich mine discoveries were made in California, Nevada, and Oregon. An overland mail route and stagecoach stations were built under urgent pressures to connect the East and West, create a nation, and preserve the Union. Mail and stage stations were built across our desert homeland. They followed Precious Springs.
Usuka stage kuicha matungonikan sunno na katanda no hanan boana sunno na suran na biding pinahan.
The road brought thousands of travelers. The outposts also brought livestock and soldiers. Game was driven away, plant life decimated. Springs were fenced and close to us. Our people found themselves displaced, destitute. Soldiers and settlers became their enemies.
That was terrorism. The old people used to say they wanted us gone. We were in their way of getting what they wanted.
My father's older sister, she had a red dress on, and when they said that there were soldiers were coming, she climbed up a bare, dead tree without no foliage, and sitting up there with a red dress on, just a good target for the soldiers to shoot at, which they did and killed her.
Well, those days they were killing the people wherever they find them at their camps. They'll just kill them for no reason.
But you don't hear that anywhere. But we hear stories about those, what we call them massacres. That's what they were.
I'm 85 years old, and I can take great pleasure in telling about my life as it has been. Well, all I can say is that the Goshes have come a long way from the time that they were, I'd say, interned on that reservation, like they were some kind of prisoners. The way my elders told me, the reason why we were there on the reservation was that the white men put us there within that barbed wire fence. And if we ever found out that we were outside that line, that we'd get taken off to jail. We came to fear the white people for that reason, because I'd say every time we see a white person, we think that they're coming to take us off the reservation to put us somewhere else or make us a slave of some sort. I was 16 years old. I realized that I needed to learn this new language. We were told at school not to speak our language. And if we did, we get extra duties. We have to clean toilet bowls and wash basins and mop floors and scrub floors and this and that. So that's how our life has been, and it hasn't been easy. People should understand that we came up the hard way. I never did notice it. There's a sign right there. For my grandson, I think life is much better. And Richard, Ishika nanga ha ke hunaswati. Always ndagonanga bicha, always ndagonasnda wakanda. It's daman dego pshita, many emod na dewakana. I said, Richard, don't forget what I said here today, what you hear me say. He said, this is our language, this is what I'm saying to you.
Well, my name's Richard Williams, and I'm the grounds manager here at Shriners Hospital. I got a scholarship through the Goshute tribe itself, and then I followed up on my education in horticulture, and that was one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life. It's really tied into my belief system as a member of the Goshute tribe. You know, I'm very proud that I come from that background of people so close to the land. What I would like my sons to take away from being members of the Goshute tribe is not take it for granted. They need to give back. You got it, you protect it, you don't, you're going to lose it forever. And that's what I'd pass on to them. And hopefully the spirituality part of it, the earth teaches them that, because I could tell them about it, but if they never see it, they're never going to experience it.
The Squaw Valley Band of Goshute face unique and deadly challenges. The Squaw Valley Reservation has become surrounded by hazardous military installations and civil industries. These include chemical and biological warfare testing, storage and destruction, and an Air Force bombing range. We have had to abandon agriculture as a viable economy. While we have other economic projects, the most successful have been the storage of various types of hazardous waste. We were approached by companies with the proposal of storing nuclear waste on the reservation. The controversy of whether this rich financial opportunity would save or destroy the tribe caused great distress among us. Powerful political forces were awakened. The deal never happened. To this day, most of the tribe cannot afford to live on the reservation. And yet the Squaw Valley Band of Goshute remains.
Growing up in Squaw Valley really has been a joy. I feel my life is truly blessed. I would never say that I've had a bad life. I'm very happy. As a teenager in America, I suppose the biggest struggle is just that constant decision, do I modernize or do I stay? Well, the real question is, do we go forward or back? That thinking that we have to fit the stereotype. We really don't. I think that as far as Goshutes go, Squaw Valley Band of Goshutes, for us the biggest thing is to survive. Tradition, of course, you know, even if we didn't practice it in government or in economy, we would still practice it at home. That's our way of preserving it, keeping it close to the family. If our ancestors, our grandparents, could get through all the tragedies that have befallen our people, then why shouldn't we? Life is easy these days, it truly is. And it's really sad when I see people who think, you know, their lives are despaired. And in my mind, though, I think there's tomorrow, you know, there's another day coming, you know. And my grandfather used to always tell me that.
Our ancestors were some of the earliest inhabitants of this land. For hundreds of years, our people, the Niue, traveled the region that would eventually become Utah, Idaho, Nevada, and Wyoming.
Shoshone ground walkers, they're travelers. You know, they don't stay at one place. They move. When summer comes, they move where all the plants that they need for medicine and for the winter comes. They follow where the elks and buffalo and everything goes, you know. They follow it along because they kill it for their winter food, you know, and they get their blankets out of hides. They make shoes and whatever because they know winter's hard.
And we had all kinds of berries and
choke cherries and all kinds of wild grasses and abundance of game. Fishing rivers like this.
And the geothermal.
Geothermal in the area. Yeah, it was really quite nice.
We had no way to know how much our lifeways would change. On July 24, 1847, religious leader Brigham Young led a group of Mormon settlers into the Salt Lake Valley. Early on, Mormon missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints attempted to convert the Shoshone. We tried to coexist, but soon the tide of pioneers overwhelmed our homeland.
Where we'd been hunters and gatherers for hundreds, if not thousands of years, when the pioneers came and their animals were eating the natural grains and the game were being killed by the non-Indians as well for food, it really created a very difficult time for us.
When the fences went up, our stores closed, and where did our people have to go? And Brigham Young did have the Indian people have a little piece of paper, and on that paper it said, "Give these Indians food." So the Indians would take this paper and go to the homes of the pioneer people and ask for food. And I think they would take food too. And they would take cattle. And
they looked at it as thievery. And we looked at it as sharing. If we had it and they needed it, we'd give it to them, and we figured they'd do the same, but it didn't work that way. Well, as you know, the tribe was pretty well decimated. The life as they had experienced it was going to change drastically. And I think they gave a lot of thought to what they were going to do.
Well, I think some of their options were either go to a reservation or to stay here and become part of the community, and that meant joining the church.
In 1875, all of our tribal members joined the LDS Church, which was another big change for them. And we kind of got away from chiefs in that. We became elders and high priests, and chiefs didn't become so important to us at that point.
Sometimes I feel if it wasn't for the church, we would have scattered. And I think the fact that we were tied to the land and didn't want to leave our homelands, that we got to stay. And sometimes I think that we became the good Indians that they wanted us to be and survived.
Survival meant learning to farm. The LDS Church helped families from the Northwestern Band settle on church land in Washakie, a small community north of Brigham City, Utah. Our old lifestyle was gone. We didn't have any reservation land to call our own. From 1878 to 1960, Washakie became our new home.
Everybody did everything, helped each other, and they come together. I remember when they had a big gymnasium, and they used to have shindigs for Christmas and New Year's, when everybody danced.
But the community didn't last. During World War II, people left to fight or work in local factories. Farming on the arid land was difficult, and many people found seasonal work elsewhere. Many buildings appeared abandoned, and in 1960, the church decided to sell the land and ordered the buildings torched. Some of the homes were empty, but others were filled with personal belongings, scrapbooks, and photographs. When people returned to Washakie, they found their belongings turned to ashes. The burning of their homes tested their faith.
I think a lot of them became disillusioned by that act. Certainly not the doctrine or the teachings of the church, but that act, they became displaced again. And where were they to go? Because really there was no place to go. I think having a community setting like they did at Washakie gave them a chance to practice more of their culture. The setting that we have now, everybody up and down the Wasatch Front, southeastern Idaho, makes it more difficult. That community-ness is not there. the struggle that we go through now trying to preserve or continue some of the culture with our children is more difficult.
Guy White Diva Yodi Kane, Guy White Diva Yodi Kane, Guy White Diva Yodi Kane, Guy White Diva Yodi Kane.
Orangautsidas. Make sugar the Miaruang Ijapagar. Osakosodum, Pia Esheresum, Ijapana, Nana Babichia, Nana Damachia.
You know, I look at our children of the tribe now, and language is very, very important to me because it defines how these people saw the world through their language, how they express themselves. And I think that is the basis of who these people were.
Well, today they're having a hard time, losing their language, the old language, Shoshone words. Most of the people like to speak English, That's easier and better for them. That's what they went to school for. Back in my days, if your father and mother speak Shoshone, there's no problem. You all speak Shoshone.
Well, the full blood now, like us, we're slowly dying off. And what we have here now is blonde hair, red hair, blue eyes, gray eyes. Those are our young generation. And who's going to believe them when they say, I'm a Northwestern Shoshone? They have to be speaking their native language for them to believe them. That's their disadvantage. So we better hurry up quickly and try to teach them. Which means that's the end of the story.
A lot of our cultural ways kind of went the wayside because we didn't live in a large Indian area where those things were preserved. And so since 1875, we've been kind of competing with everybody in the world for jobs and for, and schooling. And as a result, I think it's put us a little further ahead as far as thinking about business. We've had to go to non-Indian schools. We've had to go to non-Indian universities. And we were just thrown in and had to compete. And so I think that's probably why some of our leaders are a little better educated and a little more apt to think about creating businesses to support our tribe.
This is the first of many geothermal projects that we're going to be developing.
The Northwestern Shoshone Band is finding new ways to grow our tribal resources by creating partnerships with outside companies. Today, we are back on ancestral lands, breaking ground for a future geothermal energy plant.
This is really a significant day for the tribe. We used to camp near all of these geothermal sites in the wintertime to stay warm. And now 150 years later, we're back to the geothermal sites, only this time we're producing energy for the country. It's just a great feeling to be able to help our tribal members because we've been so deprived for so long. It's actually a crime, but we're going to be able to do anything we want now. Independent. If we don't want to take federal money, we won't take it. We're truly going to be a sovereign nation. So that's the greatest thing to me.
We'll never disappear, no matter how we are treated, We always come back. They killed us over there in Bear River Massacre. We come back. They burn us out here in Washakie. We were here. There's no way they can get rid of us. We're always going to be here. And like we shall remain, well, that's it. We stay here. There's no way they're going to get rid of us. We'll always come back.
Even today, I still feel that this is our land. You guys are just here. You might own the property, but this will always be my home. Generations and generations and generations of our people have lived here. It'll always be our home.
Creation stories are passed down through generations. They tell of struggle and evolution through 3 underworlds and finally to this one, the glittering world. 4 sacred mountains were created to set the boundaries of Dinétah, the Navajo homeland. Mount Blanca, Mount Taylor, the San Francisco Peaks, and Mount Hesperus. This is to be the land of the Diné forever. Monument Valley is a symbol of the strength and endurance of the people who call this home. Since the beginning, the Chuskai Mountains have provided water for us and shaped the deep gorges of Canyon de Chelly. We are not the only people to call this home. Ancient Pueblans left towns of rock and mud, art and architecture from another time. We lived in hogans widely dispersed on the vast plains. We hunted game on foot with bow and arrow and gathered wild plants.
Families were situated or organized by extended families, and each clan were under a Natani or a leader.
At times, long journeys were made to Pueblo trading centers like Chaco. Many peoples and clans mingled to share ceremonies, traditions, and knowledge. Driven by a search for gold, a Spanish army led by Vasquez de Coronado came to the southwest in 1540. By 1583, the Spanish had entered Dinétah.
When the Spaniards came, one of the things that they did immediately was to claim the indigenous people's resources, their land, and immediately also their labor.
The Spaniards brought sheep, which transformed our culture from hunting and gathering to sheep herding. And the introduction of the horse changed our people forever.
Navajo warriors mounted became formidable in terms of being able to not only expand their territory, but also to be able to protect their homeland.
Mexico won independence from Spain in 1821. The Mexicans claimed our land as their own. War and raiding increased. Many of our people were taken as slaves.
The slave taking of Navajo women and children was one of the primary reasons for the continual cycles of war and peace with the Spaniards and then with the Mexicans.
In 1846, under the leadership of President James Polk, the United States declared war on Mexico. Colonel Stephen Watts Kearny marched his army west. Our people met a new enemy, the American military. Mexico lost the war, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed in 1848. Mexico ceded land to the United States, a territory that included our homeland. In 1849, one of our leaders named Narbona met with the American military here at Two Gray Hills.
And when he tried to broker a peace with the American soldiers, he was murdered by the Americans and scalped, and that was something that really turned the Navajos against the Americans.
The Americans built a fort in Dinétah and called it Fort Defiance. Warriors Barboncito and Manuelito resisted the United States military conquest. President Andrew Jackson's Indian Removal Act of 1830 called for removal of all Native people who stood in the way of white settlement. The United States, under the command of General James Carleton, declared war on our people.
Carleton was the mastermind behind the campaign against the Navajos. It was Carleton who formulated the plan to create the reservation at the Bosque Redondo and to remove Navajos to that reservation.
Unlimited national expansion, Manifest Destiny, was underway and we were in the way. This became known to our people as the Fearing Time.
Manifest Destiny has meant to the Navajo people the loss of their land, the loss of their liberty, and the loss of their personal freedom. Manifest Destiny has meant genocide to indigenous peoples.
In 1864, General Christopher Kit Carson began a scorched earth attack against our people with an army of New Mexico volunteers and enemy Indian scouts.
Navajos don't think much of Kit Carson. He was very uncompassionate and very unsympathetic, and under his command, hundreds and hundreds of Navajos died.
Destitute and starving, it is estimated that 2/3 of our people were rounded up and forced to march on the Trail of Tears from their homeland, over 350 miles east to the Bosque Redondo in New Mexico. Navajo referred to the Bosque Redondo as Huilte, the place of great sorrow. More than 2,500 people died.
Our ancestors went through a lot of incredible hardships beyond our imagination. And the stories, I think, act as a way to remind ourselves of our ancestors and their courage and their resilience.
General William Tecumseh Sherman was sent to negotiate with our ancestors who survived. Our leader, Barboncito, objected to Sherman's plan to send the Diné to a reservation in Oklahoma.
He was a peace leader and probably best known for his role in negotiating the Treaty of 1868. And he spoke on behalf of the Navajo people and was able to persuade them to allow the Navajos to return to their former homelands.
The Treaty of 1868 was signed, and the prisoners of Huilte were free to make the long walk home.
When the elders came within sight of our sacred mountain, Tzotzil, Mount Taylor, they stopped and they cried because they were so happy to be returning to their homeland.
Compulsory education was part of the treaty agreement.
And so children grew up, in many cases, away from their parents for years at a time. They lived in a military-like institution.
World War II veteran Samuel Holliday remembers his experience in boarding school.
I was told no more religions, no more cultures of Navajo, no more talking Navajo. Boy, it was a hard one.
There was a real effort to keep Navajo children from speaking their language and practicing their cultural traditions and make them become Americans, like white Americans. And so it was very difficult and it was very traumatic.
Navajo leader Manuelito's 2 sons died of disease contracted at the Carlisle Indian School. This Navajo Veterans Cemetery is in Fort Defiance, Arizona, the very place Navajos were rounded up before their forced removal to the Bosque Redondo. Samuel Holliday was a Navajo code talker during World War II. Code talkers transmitted tactical messages by telephone and radio in our Diné language. It was a code the Japanese never broke and contributed to success in the Pacific.
A lot of times they sent us where it was a very dangerous spot there, and they sent messages.
Samuel Holliday was awarded the Congressional Silver Medal.
They don't know that we were Navajo code talker using Navajo language.
The very language he was punished for using in boarding school. Our tribal council was born in 1923 with Henry Chi Dodge as first chairman. The foundation was set for our present tribal government in Window Rock, Arizona.
The Diné people are members that the five-fingered intelligent earth dwellers call Diné people. We're found here between the four sacred mountains. This has always been home. And we were once very independent, very fierce, and very proud. Somewhere in there they took that away from us, but we're working on getting it back today.
The Navajo Nation Council has become one of the largest and most sophisticated Native governments in America.
As a nation, what we're trying to do is trying to reteach the language. The secret to the essence of being is the language, and we're working on that.
Today we are a nation of more than 300,000. 60% of our population is younger than 25 years of age. Monument Valley High School is a part of the Navajo educational system, started in 1966. Educators began teaching children about Navajo customs, history, and language. Dorothy Bigman is a Navajo literacy teacher.
I think teaching Navajo is very important because my parents taught me, and I would like to continue the language, and it's part of our culture and way of life.
Navajo Community College opened in 1968. Renamed Diné College, it's the first Indian-owned and Indian-directed college in the United States.
There's only one way that we can grow, and this is to be Navajo. It's just to speak the language, to have the color, to know the herbs, to know the sacred songs and the sacred stories. No one else can grow that way. To me, the difference is culture.
The Diné are a unique people, a complex society of strong values and tradition. Throughout a long and challenging history, they've not only survived, but have found the means to thrive. With strength rooted in the past, they have embraced the future.